What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. While I was very skeptical that this day would ever come, many people have accused Pierre Poilievre of turning his back on the Freedom Convoy, saying that, he once stood out and spoke alongside the truckers, but then all of a sudden turned his back, and it was about optics, it was about all these different things. I've often said Pierre couldn't say anything when it came to support because of, outside interference. The same reason that Danielle Smith was bound not to really speak on top of what happened with the Coots boys that were in court. However, Pierre taking a very bold stance today, doing the unthinkable. He actually tweeted out in regards to what's going on. Let me get better on camera here. What's happening with Chris Barber and Tamara Lich. Now, I want to point out that I've actually reached out to Pierre's camp for comment about this, and before any YouTubers believe that this was due to them putting pressure on Pierre to do this, I'm sure they'll love to take credit. I've actually gotten comment from Pierre's people that while there was a big stir on social media, Pierre is just frustrated when he hears about everything that's happening with Tamara Lich, Chris Barber. He says enough is enough. It's time to say something. So before some people take a victory lap, I just want to ensure everyone that I have been told, at least by his camp, that Pierre has always stood on this side. I believe he has. And he just felt that before they go to court this week, it's time to actually speak up. It's time to say something. Let's get into what he actually had to say. Let's get this straight. While rampant violent offenders are released hours after their most recent charges and anti-Semitic rioters vandalize businesses, terrorize daycares, and block traffic without consequences, the Crown wants 7 years prison time for the charge of mischief for Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. How is this justice? Now, I agree, and we've all been asking the same thing as time has gone on. In fact, for those who are invested in what's happening with Chris Barber and Tamara Lich, if you're not aware yet, the government is actually trying to seize Chris Barber's truck, Big Red, and dismantle it down to nothing. And a lot of people had said, hey, how come Chris doesn't just sell the truck? How come he doesn't move it along to somebody else for $1? Well, the reason is because he actually already has. He sold the truck to his son so that his son could operate his business while he's been going through the longest mischief trial of all time, only to find out that the government can take it. The government can just jump right in and get an order to rip it away from his son. So really, my biggest concern when it comes to this trial, aside from, 7 years jail time, which is absolutely absurd for mischief, is where do you actually own anything in this country? Where do you own your vehicle? Where do you own your property? Where do you own your home? I've often said that because you pay property taxes on your property, even once you've paid off your mortgage, you don't technically own your home. The government can annex your property. They can take it at any time and give you a minimal payout that they find is realistic value. So what do you own in this country, and where do the laws stand? I don't know. It's funny, Tamara posting out this morning, for anybody who wasn't sure what's happening this week as they go for their sentencing update, keep in mind that the process is beginning this week. Again, I'll have new news dropping whenever we have information on that. It's expected to wrap up in August, at which time we'll find out the fate of Chris and Tamara. But as Tamara lays out here, yesterday afternoon I received a copy of the Crown's materials for our upcoming sentencing hearing and can confirm they are seeking a 7-year prison sentence for myself and an additional year, meaning 8 years, for Chris Barber. This is absolutely ridiculous. As you can see down here, as previously stated, the worst offender, worst offense principle no longer operates as a constraint on the imposition of a maximum sentence and is not something reserved for an abstract case involving the worst crime and circumstances. Having said that, this is not an abstract case reflecting on the worst case of mischief. Is it the worst case of mischief? With this in mind, a 7-year sentence on that count for each Barber and Lich, and 1 year consecutive for Barber's role in counseling the disobeyance of a court order when considered in the context of the Freedom Convoy and its impact, is proportionate to the gravity of the offense, the moral culpability of the offenders, and takes into consideration both unmitigating factors and both Lich and Barber's personal circumstances. This is absolutely asinine. It's odious. It should not be allowed within the courts, while we recently had an offender who tried to proposition a 14-year-old girl with SA, and he was excused. He was discharged and allowed to continue working on his citizenship in Canada. That was recent, by the way. Meanwhile, these two are going to go to jail for almost a decade? I don't think so. One thing I wanted to touch on in this video is that there is some silver lining from Pierre sticking his neck in. Hopefully it provides, while I don't agree with politicians swaying court cases, it hopefully gets social media talking. It gets a little bit of pushback coming the way of the judge for this trial in particular. But a lot of people were saying that, again, Pierre had discounted the Freedom Convoy. There was never any support for the Freedom Convoy. And I came upon this post from Vesper stating to counter doubts about Conservatives not defending Tamara Lich, and listen to Conservative MP Leslie Lewis, who called her a political prisoner in 2022. Conservatives were the only ones to defend not just Tamara, but the Freedom Convoy in general. And he has a very valid point. I'm going to listen to what Dr. Lewis had to say in True North's archive, but then I have a little bit of fact for you when it comes to what Vesper is stating.
You said today that Tamara Lich was a political prisoner and a victim of a weaponized court system. Could you elaborate on that and why you think she was treated unfairly?
Well, two judges, those aren't really my words. The judges have come out and said clearly that the court system is not a system that should be judging people's political views. And in the first case, the judge that detained Tamara was a former Liberal candidate, and many believe that she should have recused herself from that case. And in the other situation includes a Crown attorney who over a long period of time has given over approximately $17,000 to the Liberal Party. And so there is a presence of bias. And I think that the criminal justice system has to be above reproach. Justice does not only have to be done, it has to be seen to be done. And when a judge has to step in for a second time and say that the court system is not a place to settle political vendettas, then it's obvious that her detention went beyond just mere legal principles. It went into her political beliefs, which the judge clearly said that she was not at a trial. It was a bail hearing, and the facts will come out at a trial. And so the bail hearing wasn't the proper forum for that.
Now, it's funny that Dr. Lewis mentions this, and I want to iterate that I do know Dr. Lewis, in fact, 100% supports Tamara and Chris. In fact, and all of those involved in the Freedom Convoy. When I was in Ottawa in 2023, in fact, I recently showed a video where I had photos with myself and Dr. Lewis when I met with her at her office. She actually signed a copy of How the Prime Minister Stole Freedom for Tamara that I gave to Tamara after that meeting. It's just so funny that a lot of people don't believe that the Conservatives have always stood behind the Freedom Convoy and the actions of the Freedom, or stood up for the actions of, how do we put this, legal protest. I think that's the best way to say it. Dr. Lewis has a very valid point when she says that this is essentially the justice system trying to get a vendetta on speaking up against the government. We've seen that with the illegal enactment of the Emergency Act. We saw that with the way that people had been treated with freezing bank accounts. The government's mad. You park your trucks on their front lawn, embarrass them, and essentially they're saying, well, now we're going to put the tools to you, we're going to put the boots to you, because we don't want you speaking up ever again. Now, it's not to say that the Freedom Convoy did anything wrong. In fact, when you compare it to most protests that happen in today's society in Canada, it's very tame by measure, unless you're going to merely compare it by volume, in which point, they executed a protest flawlessly. I think that they executed one of the most effective, unappreciated by the government protests in our lifetime. The government called this out as a small fringe minority with unacceptable views, essentially birthing this channel, but also underestimated the dismay of thousands of Canadians gathering that simply wanted the government to approach them and hear their concerns and find a solution. You have to remember that Tamara Lich is apparently going to be sent to jail for 7 years for being a spokesperson in press conferences. Tamara wasn't out on the streets. She wasn't kicking in windows. She wasn't lighting things on fire. She wasn't blocking bridges. She never, in fact, no one in the convoy ever ordered for bridges to be blocked. I find it so funny how conflict of interest within the legal system is essentially going to make political prisoners out of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber and dismantle a symbol of freedom in this country, being a big red, merely for their own satisfaction. Hopefully, with Pierre standing up today, hopefully showing this archive of Dr. Lewis, more conservatives will start to speak out. More conservatives will start to say, hey, look, this isn't right. Now, again, I am not condoning that any politician try to influence the opinion of a judge, but what they do need to influence is that what we're talking about here is mischief. The time that Tamara Lich has already spent in jail on 2 separate occasions is more time than anyone has ever served on a mischief charge. Why are we talking about another 7 years? Well, again, cross the government, they'll cripple you to your knees and they'll beat you until you're black and blue, and they'll tell you to like it. What's the most disconcerting thing out of all of this for me personally is that it's our tax dollars that are giving the government endless bankrolls for lawyers to go after 2 of Canada's many heroes that stood the line, that held the line, that protested so that you and I could go out and enjoy our freedoms, enjoy the company of family, visit a family member in the hospital. I spoke with Tamara earlier this week when she started to head to Ottawa. And I told her that no matter the outcome, no matter what happens, she's a hero. She will always be my hero, both her and Chris, for everything they've done and continue to take on the backs of millions of Canadians that they spoke out for. This country, and I've said it a million times, owes them an unpayable debt for what they've done. I can only hope that after Pierre speaking up, if more pressure comes from politicians, that this judge realizes if they're going to sentence Chris and Tamara via some crazy vendetta, it's going to result in a lot of blowback. I really pray that Chris and Tamara are freed and we can move on with our lives and they can end their pandemic and be able to work for a living, be able to be out in public, move, live their lives like a normal tax-paying citizen. Let me know what you guys think down below. Are you happy to see Pierre speak out? Are you happy he's finally made a public statement about it? And do you hope to see more from other conservatives and more pushback before this sentencing finishes up in August? Let me know what you think down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video's earned your subscription. Make sure as you hit the subscribe button, you turn on your bell for all notifications so you never miss a beat whenever a video drops on this channel. Join me live each and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show, where I'm joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I always look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you this Friday night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.